Good morning. Rainy Sunday afternoon. Decided to do, this is Autumn. Mrs. Bigglesworth. We want $1 million. I know I'm not good at it. But anyway, I thought she wanted to get in on the act, so I thought I'd say hi. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.
Hi.
Anyway, it's going to be a short tutorial on fractures, different types, what they look like, how they can look like, what you can do for them, and so forth. Okay? So, everyone knows that the skeletal system is what forms the structure of the body, along with the musculature, gives you a certain type of form also. You know, you look fat, dumpy, tall, slender, whatever, okay? Depending upon your musculature and how much fat you have, whatever. But the framework is the skeleton. And if you look at on x-rays, someone who's very obese and heavyweight, you look at their skeletal structure, you can sometimes find the bones are very fine, very small. So that skeletal structure wasn't made to carry all that weight. Okay, that's why it's very important for us to get in shape and lose weight. All right. Now, the other thing about bones is that they're under tension. Okay, because you have the muscles are usually in the middle. You have the insertions of tendons, the origins of tendons, and they cross over joints. You know, coming across here's your bicep tendon. You know, crosses over to the forearm or whatever. It allows you to flex, extend, so forth. Right. So. You remember that the skeletal structure is formed by the tension placed upon it by the muscles and tendons and ligaments of the body. Okay, so that being said, when one fractures a bone, and I'm going to work on long bones, okay, like your phalanges or fingers, you know, your forearm, ulnar radius, your humerus, your femur, your tib fib, whatever, and talk about those because they're the easiest to describe when you're describing, you know, bone fractures. Okay, but you got to remember, wherever there is a break, like a suspension bridge, wherever that suspension bridge, you know, is like this under tension. Wherever there is a cable starts to break or sag, the whole suspension bridge starts to sag. Or if there's a break, it starts to collapse. Okay, so if you think about a suspension bridge in your body, the skeletal system, you'll understand that certain fractures present themselves in certain ways. Okay. And that's what this video is going to be about. Okay, first of all, what we're going to have is a very simple, called like a periosteal buckling, all right? This usually happens in children, all right, because their bones aren't formed hard yet. They're kind of flexible and they're bendy or whatever. The periosteum is a thick piece of fibrous tissue that covers the outside of the bone, and all your nutrients come from the periosteum to feed the bone. All your vessels go through it or in it, sometimes nerves innervate and so forth. So what I've done is I've taken a chopstick and it's covered with a straw, okay? And when you look on x-ray at a periosteal type buckling, or really just a simple little fracture, you'll see a little you might see a little angulation, you may not see none at all. But you will see, as I take the bone away, okay, you will see that there is a little bit of buckling or wrinkling, I don't know how well you can see that, on the x-ray. It comes up as a soft tissue wrinkling, okay? And that's sometimes what it does, it appears like this in diagram number 1, all right? That's diagram number 1, the top one, okay? Okay, secondly, you can also have what is called a simple fracture, okay? And a simple fracture is just the two bones breaking right across the middle, bang, okay? They're not displaced, meaning they're not moved. They're in line. You may see them on the x-ray like this, okay, whatever, but not out of alignment usually, okay? They're very simple, all right? And the periosteum is holding it on, all right? So that's a simple fracture, all right? And I've done the diagram number 2. Okay, diagram number 2. All right. Now, with movement or lack of splinting or whatever, that fracture can turn into something worse. Okay, but usually a simple fracture, just need a posterior splint, whatever, and pat it and kept in alignment. It should do fine. It might move a little bit, but not much, because usually the muscles in the periosteum hold it in place. Now, the third fracture I want to talk about is a spiral or an oblique. First, it can start off like this, like an oblique, meaning on an angle. And then what happens is you twist and you get a spiral motion. It's called a spiral fracture. Okay, on X-ray, it could be a part like this. All right, and then under the stress of the muscles, it can be pulled together this way. Usually they're collapsed, and you want to align them. You want to realign them, put bone to bone, and then put a plate across them. Okay, or a rod down them. Okay, this is called an oblique if it's not displaced, and usually if it is displaced like this, it is called a spiral fracture. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize for the diagrams, but it's what I have. That's diagram number 3. All right, so number 1 is your periosteal crimping. Okay. Number 2 is your simple fracture, and it's not, the lines aren't always as straight across. They're jagged. And then you have your spiral or your oblique fracture. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to go into, and I don't have anything for that. Well, sometimes we're going to talk about an oblique fracture. Here's one where it hasn't started yet. Okay. You get a little bend there. See? If I put it behind me or whatever, like that. That's an oblique fracture also. All right. So I haven't been able to do this. Now the next one is a comminuted fracture. That's a fracture that's broken up into many different pieces. Okay, and it's very hard for the surgeon to put those things back together. All right, because you got to find fragments. And sometimes what they do is they'll graft the areas that they can't put back together with cadaver bone or some sort of synthetic type of bone. All right, or a bone glue or whatever, methyl methacrylate, whatever. And they'll either plate it or they'll try to rod it. Okay, and that is diagram number 4. That's diagram number 4. It's a comminuted, meaning crushed up into different types of fragments. Usually that's a crush fracture. We'll do that. Okay. Now fracture and break are the same thing. Break is lay term. Fracture is a professional term. That's all. They're the same thing. They mean the same thing. The bone is broken. All right. Now the last one I want to talk about, and this is something you might see in the wild, because you don't know what kind of fractures these are, because the skin has integrity, the muscle has integrity, and so forth. Although it will bleed into the fracture. Okay, muscle can be damaged, nerves can be damaged, and so forth. Okay, I want to call it the compound fracture. Okay. Or complex. The comminuted one can be a complex fracture too, meaning it's that much harder to put together. But diagram number 5 is your compound fracture, and where you see those oblique lines that I kind of shaded in, that is the skin or the muscle or whatever. And you have the fragment sticking up through the skin. Okay. Now, this fracture is very unstable, as is the comminuted one above. But one of the reasons why this compound fracture is really important to protect and to put a dressing on is that it breaks the skin. Okay, so thereby the skin is the largest organ on your body. Okay, and it keeps infection and debris and detritus and all kinds of evil things out of the body. So once that skin is compromised, it is easy for soil, leaves, twigs, whatever, depending on how you broke it, where you broke it, snow, mud, dirt, to get inside your wound, okay? And that has to be thoroughly flushed, irrigated, or washed out. Whether you use sterile water, whether you use regular tap water, whether you use water, saline solution, whatever, it needs to be irrigated as best you can at the site, if you can, okay? It also has to be bandaged, okay? We usually put like a wet to dry dressing on top of it, and it has to be thoroughly stabilized, because that will move, okay? Bones will grate on each other if they're not splinted well, okay? And that's why you have to splint above and below your fracture. If I have a forearm fracture here of the ulnar or radius, you remember I have tendons and ligaments crossing over that will move this fracture around from above or below, okay? So in order to put a splint on this arm right here, the best way to splint this forearm fracture would be from the shoulder across the back all the way out to the fingers, which is the posterior splint. Okay, if you can't do that, then you have to do it from the elbow to the fingers. Okay, and when you splint something, you always want to check for circulation checks. Okay, circ checks we call them. Numbness, tingling, bleeding. Okay, feeling in the hands, whatever. Anytime they have numbness, tingling, they can't feel, or it looks like skin is dying, it gets a dusky pale and then it starts getting grayish and whatever, okay, you need either you put the splint on too tight, or there's something going on where the vessel has been occluded and or ruptured or whatever, and you're losing blood. When you have a fracture, the muscles are torn, ripped, or burst, and you bleed into it, okay? And that's one of the first ways that a fracture will heal itself. It'll start a big clot, okay, in and around the area, and the negative and positive ions will go across the broken bone and start to set up a healing process. That's why sometimes if a fracture is not attended to early enough, you have to re-break it to reset it because it was malaligned, okay, or not in alignment, okay. Most bones, long bones, can be realigned. They don't have to be done perfectly because a callus will form on the outside and through the middle, and they'll be fine. And if you look on an X-ray, you'll see a big healing bump on either side, but it's okay. And the bone may look like it's out of alignment, but cosmetically on the outside, it isn't. Okay. So I got another video coming up behind this. Any questions you have of me? I'm sorry it's short. It's the best I can do with what I got. And I'll see you in a little bit because I'm going to talk about lacerations, okay? Have a great day. This is the Grizz, out.